So we're going to break up again. This time the rooms are going to be assigned exactly the same as the last time. So the people who were in the first room, you're going to be in the same room again. And then this time I've got the questions broken up slightly differently. So if you're in groups 1 and 3, I want you to look at the PDF. So for groups 1 and 3, look at the 4D clauses. So clause 4.11 and 4.12 specifically refer to 4D, which is the link between time and the model, so the construction schedule and the model. And have a look at the actual clauses and report back what you think when the contractor should create these simulations, and are these simulations valuable to the contractor? They may be required by the client, but do they have any values to the contractor? Yes or no? If you're in groups 2, 4, or 6, in other words, the even numbers, have a look at clause 4.13. So you only have to worry about one clause. And it's to do with quantification. Is it reasonable to assume that all claims can be based on models? So have a discussion in those groups and see if there's enough information in the models to be able to make claims for progress payments. And the last two groups, 5 and 7, have a look at clause 9.3 and look at the asset information clause and determine whether you think it's possible for a contractor to comply with the specification and provide the information required by the client in BIM, and let us know your comments. I'm going to open the rooms and you guys can join the rooms and you can answer these questions. So, and then we'll take it back. So we're going to do this these are simpler questions. We're going to do this for 8 to 10 minutes and then we'll get you back in the main room and we'll try and get a report back from each of the groups. I think everybody's back. You're all very welcome back. So for these rooms, let's try and do this as quickly as we can. So room 1, your question was, when should the contractor create 4D and is it valuable to contractors? So can we have a representative from room 1 on the value of 4D?
Hello, this is Kit from group 1.
Hey, Kit.
Hello. Our group thinks that 4D will be helpful for the contractors, especially when, presuming this document is assigning for the main contractors, because 4D is mainly concern times. And then by applying this, it can help in the planning stage to get all trades together, as well as on the construction stage, helping them for project monitoring.
Yep.
But we're also concerned about the capability for the subcontractors or the contractor itself, whether they have enough training or enough technologies to really run this one, or would it be very heavy on the to initiate this 4D model for them?
Yep. Okay. Do you think that the wording is reasonable, that the client's asking for too much or the client's asking for the right amount?
We're not quite sure about if this is too much, but we think it might be helpful for them before site possession.
Okay.
To have the model.
Yeah. So pre-construction.
Yes.
Okay, great. So group 3 had the same question. So can we get a representative from group 3 and see if they picked up anything different?
Hello.
Yep.
So our group think the 4D modeling should happen before the final design was developed.
Yay, yes, 100% agreed.
And for the second question, it's not only good for the contractors, but also helps to all the planners and project team to achieve the efficient planning of construction work.
Yep. Okay, great. So thank you for that. So just to add to those two comments on this 4D issue, the contract is a requirement to produce a proposed construction method statement in a video to be submitted as part of a method statement for the client's approval. So the way that's written, every time the contractor submits a method statement, they would have to submit a 4D model. So for example, if they have to put a method statement in for a trenching activity, under this contract, they would have to provide a video of how they're going to do the trenching. So at some point in time, this will become unreasonable because for every method statement, you're not going to require a 4D video. So if I was pricing this job, I would put a caveat in my tender and I would list out the actual method statements that I would actually provide a 4D model for. The second part of this 4D method statement to be submitted for the following types of activities: all concurrent activities utilizing the same space. So that would mean that if you were looking at a hotel fit out, so using Wendy's example of this fancy hotel in London, if you were to build a 4D sequence of that hotel construction process, you would have to show in your video how the carpets were being installed at the same time the bathrooms were being installed, at the same time the doors were being finished. Because what it does is it covers everything in the project. So again, you would have to put a caveat and identify what actual construction systems will be sequenced. Finishes you would not normally put in 4D. So most people that do 4D construction method sequences will do the primary structure, they'll do the facade, and they'll do all of the primary MEP systems. There is no value in doing infinite amount of planning for small activities, because the amount of time it would take to create a 4D sequence, it would be quicker to install the thing yourself. So for example, laying carpet in a corridor in a hotel, there is no value in doing that in 4D. That just gets covered in the construction program. So 4D has to be sensible, but it doesn't have to cover everything that's in the building. So just be careful with 4D. Okay, so we're going to go to the next question on quantification. So can we get group 2 to report back? So I'll show you the clause 4.13. So who's from group 2? Okay, so the comment has gone back from Xiyuan. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation. I apologize. We think it's reasonable, according to the clause, as the model should reflect the actual site condition. And if there are any discrepancies, the contractor has to do necessary amendments. Okay, so you think it's reasonable, right? Let's find out, what does the team from room 4, what do you guys think? Can we get a representative from room 4?
We did kind of think it's reasonable as well, with the same reason as group 2, because it should reflect the site. But then we do have a question about, like, because if they're getting claims, then something has already happened at the site, right? So that should be like cross-referenced as well at the same time.
Yeah, you should definitely, yeah, you need to be able to identify variations from the original contract, yeah. Okay, you guys think it's reasonable? Okay. And the group 6, can we get a comment from group 6 in terms of is the clause reasonable in terms of quantification? Tiffany?
Hi, the clause, it's reasonable given that it's fulfilled, which I think in reality, it wouldn't run so smoothly on site.
How do you mean, what do you mean it won't run smoothly in reality?
As in, I mean, it all sounds a little bit too good with the monthly progress report and
sounds too good.
Yes,
I agree, it sounds way too good.
Yeah, because usually on sites is a lot more chaotic with changes, and what's built is not matching to the shop drawings and so on. There's a lot more chaotic.
That never happened on a construction site. What are you talking about?
They're not matching to requirements and so on.
Okay, so let me explain why this clause is not reasonable, because I can understand where you're coming from, but let me explain why this clause is not reasonable from a technology perspective. So what the clause is saying is that progress payment claims shall be made in accordance with the quantity extracted from BIM. So in other words, if you read that from a legal perspective, you can only claim for quantities extracted from BIM. And the reality is, in any model that anybody's ever created, only 60 to 70% of the building can be measured from BIM. So for example, we don't measure our model trims or finishes in Revit typically. So a simple thing like a skirting board will not be in Revit. So if it's not modeled, it can't be quantified. So this clause is unreasonable in that the expectation is that everything ends up in the model, and it's not actually plausible because it would take too much time to model stuff to get measured. So that's the first problem. The model should be submitted as an accurate representation of situation on site for extraction of quantities. That's nearly impossible to achieve. The problem is that the guys who are building the models are not typically on site. So how on earth are they going to make sure that their model reflects what's happening on site? And things are happening on site on an hourly basis. So how on earth do you make sure that you're up to speed? Now, if it's concrete quantities and you're building a concrete superstructure, then you've got some chance. But if it's something like a mechanical fit out for fire sprinkler pipes and electrical fit out for cable trays and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have no way of figuring out how it's all been tagged on site. So making sure that the model is an accurate representation of the situation on site is next to impossible. And then the contractor shall submit the model inclusive of the quantity takeoff together with the monthly report. That's fair enough. The quantity takeoff shall be in accordance with what's reflected on site. Very difficult to do. The contractor shall make necessary amendments in the model for any discrepancy of site condition. That basically means the contractor has to keep changing the model on an hourly basis, which is completely implausible. And then demonstrate to perform the quantity takeoff to illustrate the accuracy of the model. Okay, so this requirement is completely unreasonable. It is technologically possible. It is practically impossible. So be very careful about what you think is reasonable. So the model does not represent the entire project. It doesn't include temporary works. It doesn't include attendances. It doesn't include a lot of other things that have to be put in progress payment claims. So I can understand why you would think it's reasonable, but you have to take a step back and actually look at the reality of what happens in a construction project. This clause is completely unreasonable. Okay, so we got 2 more rooms to go. Is it possible to comply with clause 9.3? What did group 5 think?
We think that it is not entirely possible.
It's not entirely possible. Okay, so now you're sitting between fences. Okay.
Because it needs the consultant, subcontractor, and even the supplier's input.
Yep.
To produce a model that is competent for facility management.
Yeah. Okay. So how would you go about solving the problem if it's not entirely plausible? How would you actually get a definition of what is possible?
Only highlight the information that contractor is or it can be produced such as shop drawing.
Yep.
It is normal or an manual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. So if you use the O&M manual as a guideline, that's a pretty good way of doing it. Okay, can we hear from group 7? What did you think is it possible to comply with the specification in clause 9.3?
Yes, it's Jimmy from
Hey, Jimmy.
group 7, and we think for those information mentioned in clause 9.3 is possible to comply with that, because from that 9.5 you can see some quite traditional information provided by the contractors to the asset management team,
Yep.
like O&M manual, soft drawing, detail drawing, even some material properties. This information, regardless to whether it's an AIM model or just a traditional way of hard copy, the contractors still have to provide this information. So I think the contractors can comply with this, but all depends on whether the operator, the property manager, got the AIM, the capability to extract those information, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. Okay. So yeah, so that last comment is very valid. The challenge with this asset information model is, yes, you can create all this information. So you can create information about spaces, elements, et cetera, but once you pass that information across, is it in a format that can be used, and is it structured in a way that can actually be used in a valuable way? So I'm going to give you some slides and go through some of these issues. So thank you all very much for your comments. They're all very valid. And I hope you found this particular workshop valuable.